Welcome to the first official Aussie Gamers Express Spoilercast. What is a Spoilercast, I hear you ask? Well, simply we are chatting about a certain game without reserve. So this is your one and only warning. Spoiler alert! This episode we're chatting about the one and only Spider-Man. I am, of course, Snoogs, and joining me today is the myth himself, Mr. Lucas. How are you, bro?
Hey, very good. You nailed that first go.
Oh,
What happened?
I'm getting better.
You are getting better. Well done. It feels strange being behind the microphone again.
Oh, well, is it just when you're actually being invited? You're not just jumping in with the edits?
Yeah, well, yeah, I suppose I have been behind the microphone, but just not actually part of the show.
Well, mate, this week it's a little bit different. So before we get into it, we're going to break down about how we're going to go about what we're going through, I suppose. So with Spider-Man being recently released, we've both played through it. We thought we'd get together and discuss a few main things. Again, full spoilers. We're going to go into everything. Predominantly looking at the gameplay and visuals, side missions, main story. And Lucas, you got anything else you want to touch on while we're going through? Anything major that sticks out for you?
I've got a couple of things that you look. If you've listened to the podcast before, and you obviously know my thoughts on the game, I absolutely love Spider-Man on the PlayStation 4. But I've got a couple of things that really piss me off that I don't like. And then there's a couple of things where I was absolutely blown away that they actually had the balls to put into this game. So just a couple of things like that. But the list that we've got to chat about is pretty much on par with what I was thinking about chatting about. Beautiful.
All right, mate. Well, let's kick it off with the gameplay and visuals. We'll get stuck into it. There was a big hoo-ha between, I suppose, the E3 release and the finished product. Predominantly about the damn puddles.
Puddlegate, yes.
Yeah, Puddlegate 2018. What was your first initial thoughts of just the visual impact that Spider-Man gave you the first time you booted it up?
Oh, blew me away. I was not expecting such visual fidelity in an open world game. The facial features, the detail in the character models is just crazy good. Like, I can't believe there's that much detail. I would normally expect that kind of detail from like your linear games, like The Order 1886 or whatever it was called.
Yes.
Look, no game looks as good as that because it's so amazing, but it's a linear game. There's not a lot of memory that's required to load at certain times. But this is an open world game. Normally your open world games are toned down. I think of games like Fallout and Skyrim, big massive open worlds, but the graphics are really simple. But obviously Spider-Man's not as big as those games, but the graphical fidelity in that game was well above what I was expecting.
Yeah, I likened it to a lot of the computer generated anime that you see nowadays. Especially even going back as far as what was it, the Spirits Within? Is that Final Fantasy?
Oh yeah, the Final Fantasy movie. That was a long time ago, but that was very advanced for its time, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, but it gives that sort of, if anyone's seen that hasn't seen much on Spider-Man, it might give you a bit of an idea. This is a game that you're playing. It's not just something you're sitting back and watching. So it just absolutely blew me away. And one thing that I always pick on whenever I play these sorts of games is the eyes. And the eyes in Spider-Man look like they've got moisture. They've got a glisten to them. They look like they have, I suppose you could say, like a depth. Like they have realism to them. I was absolutely blown away by all of that. And especially when you see that many different character models with that many different characters, it's, completely and utterly blew me away. For those that are wondering too, we both played this on the PS4 Pro.
Yeah. Now, for you might have this thing with eyeballs and moisture and all that sort of stuff because it's a little bit weird. But for me, what really got me as well is the detail in the fabrics, those textures of the Spider-Man suits. It just looked so amazing. Like, you got a real good glimpse of it when you would have the loading screen, and you'd have those close-up sort of still action shots of Spider-Man, and you would see like underneath his feet and the detail that are like in the grip of his sort of shoes, if you want to call them that. And then you would actually see those kind of details even in real time as you would swing about the buildings. You'd actually see those textures, and you'd hit the photo mode, because every game these days has a photo mode worth its weight in gold. But you go into photo mode and you would zoom in, and you're like, that's the full HD texture. Like, it's not even a dumbed down version for when you're actually playing. Amazing. Just real beautiful game.
Absolutely stunning. Well worth it. Probably looking at those real-time moments as well, Spider-Man's been one of those characters that has sort of been very, well, not even hit and miss. It's just been miss.
Oh, the games of the past have been rubbish.
Yeah, they've been terrible. The standout in the previous games, I thought, was always Bruce Campbell doing the voiceover.
Yeah.
But this one, actually, you feel like... Well, I felt like Spider-Man. I felt that the fluidity, and he's a hard character to capture. The way that he moves, he's quick, he's agile. It was always going to be hard to capture that essence, but I think they did it pretty well. Especially the swinging about, the combos in the combat, and being able to chain things together. The actual movement itself, they seem to capture a lot of it, which I thought was leaps and bounds where I was expecting it to be anyway.
Well, talking about the movement and the swinging around, did you notice one of the small details in there that actually really blew me away? That they actually had the voice actor of Spider-Man record, I don't know if it was more than 2 or if it was 3 or 4 or whatever, but there was more than one line of the exact same dialogue recorded. So that way they would play depending on the situation you're in. So if you're in, sometimes when you're just swinging around the city, you'll get a phone call. And you might be talking to Aunt May, or you might be talking to that the cop lady, Watanabe, or whatever her name was.
Yep.
If you were just standing on the side of the road or just walking, it would just be like a normal voiceover, and he would just be talking. But if you happened to be swinging at the time that you received a call, it was almost like they recorded a completely separate line of dialogue, because when he was talking, he would have some sort of like stress in his voice, like he was puffed or exerting energy because he's swinging from buildings. So I think they at least recorded the exact same lines twice, just in case the player was swinging or walking, so they would have that difference. So it wouldn't be just like, oh yeah, how you going, as you're swinging from building to building. Did you notice that?
I didn't actually. I did notice that when, like it didn't pick up, but I did realise that when he was swinging, there were quite a few times, especially when it was, like when you were doing those big, sort of the very fast swings.
Yeah.
He did seem to try and rush the phone call a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's
like
the thing.
He was talking quicker, and it seemed to be a little bit rushed.
Yeah,
which was
that's
trying
it.
to speed it up.
And that's what they did. I know that for a fact that they did do that, and I just don't know if there is more than 2 different versions. But that was a really neat small detail that they probably could have got away with not doing, but very appreciated that they did. I thought that was a nice little addition.
So, what about the combat, mate? How did you find the combat?
I found the combat really good. Now, look, there's always going to be that stigma of the Arkham games sort of hovering over the top of this, because it's kind of like the benchmark for a superhero game, because it's really the only superhero game to date that has been so bloody successful. So it's always going to be the yardstick, a new superhero game comes out. Is it going to be better or worse than Arkham? And Arkham is really well known for its combat. It's got really cool combat with the breaks or the counters and your combos and all of that. And I feel that Spider-Man did a really good job in taking some good pieces of action from that kind of combat, but changed it up enough to suit Spider-Man as well as not copying Batman, because I think that would be a really big downfall if it was really just a carbon copy of the Arkham combat. Now, there's a lot in there that is very similar, but changed enough to turn it into Spider-Man's moves, and I thought it was amazing. Like, the whole ability to stalk your enemies and zip down and take them out is a little bit Batman-like, but it's done in a different way, because, obviously Batman would use his gadgets and stuff.
Yeah, I liked the when you sort of pick them up and put them in a cocoon like a spider.
Yeah, they're really good. Those were the ones that you could only do if they were close.
Yeah, I think it was a perch takedown or something.
There was a perch takedown, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And then there was a strike takedown or something like that, which you could do with they're a little bit further away. Yeah, that was really cool, where he would grab them, bring them up, string them up into a cocoon, and then just hang them off the side of whatever you're standing on. Those things, you can do similar things like that in Batman, but this is changed up, and it's turned it into a Spider-Man move. And it makes sense that he should be able to do that.
Yeah.
So even though it's a similar mechanic to the Arkham games, it's very well deserving to be in this one.
Yeah, and one thing I did notice, because Spider-Man's, like, Batman's more about brute force as well.
Yes.
And that's, like, playing the Arkham games, I always felt that it was very heavy, and it was, heavy hits, heavy movement, but powerful movement. Whereas a lot of the Spider-Man stuff, especially with the moves he does where he's sliding underneath people, attacking them from behind, it's not heavy, there's no real weight to it, it's very fluid, and it's kind of how Spider-Man has to be.
It's very, very nimble, very agile, which is the difference between Spider-Man and Batman. He's not a hard hitter, but he's a technical kind of fighter.
Yes.
Some of those moves were amazing that he pulled off, and a lot of them were very like wrestling, like WWE or whatever it is.
One of the little things for the moves that I always liked was, you'd finish an area or a takedown and whatnot, and you'd ring Watanabe or whoever, and you'd have the bad guys, strung up. And that's where they were waiting. But when you start taking people down off a building, I always loved it that you'd kick someone off the side of a building and they'd have that tracer on them. So they go down past the building and then get sucked back in and stuck to the side of the building.
Yeah, I think that was the devs' way of showing that you're not actually killing those people that you've kicked flying off the top of a skyscraper. They're actually just getting stuck to the side of the building. How they get down from there, I don't know, but they're not dead. That's
somebody
the main
else's
thing.
Problem. Yeah.
That's right.
Did you ever find it to be a little bit button mashery?
Well,
That's not really a word, but
I found that if I button mashed, I generally failed. It was a lot of you had to combo, because just mashing the same move over and over again, while it probably would essentially get you there, it takes a really long time. So I found mixing up your moves, doing different combos, and using different gadgets was a lot more a lot more good. Yeah. More goodera. Anyway.
Well, speaking of gadgets, what was your favourite?
Well, I mainly used the bomb one, which would hit them, explode, and then cover all the ones around them. And then I also loved the trip mine as well.
Yes.
Yeah, because you could either place the trip mine somewhere and it would draw them and stick them to the wall, or you could stick it on them and it could stick to another enemy and draw them together, knock them out.
Yes. Yeah, that was very much my go-to. was the trip mine. Also, The little flying drone. So did you get to use that much?
Yeah, I did use that.
Yeah, so
is that the
so
little,
the drone
little guy that follows you around and shoots them?
Yeah. So it's a drone that sort of like electrocutes them, shocks them.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that was another one that I found would be good just for when you've got those big mobs of people, especially towards the end of the game, and you're starting to get mobbed a lot more. I found that was a good way just to slow things down a little bit, just so you could get those combos together and start moving it around, because he would also stop, especially like the big heavy dudes who you couldn't go one-on-one with. You'd have to either get behind them, knock them off balance, or web them some way.
Mm-hmm.
So I found that was a good way to take them down. Spidey suits.
There's a lot of suits in there, but I didn't like most of them. There was probably only a
I was
couple
upset the
that I really
symbiote
liked.
suit wasn't in there.
Yeah, it's understandable why that wasn't there, though.
Yeah, there's very much understandable, because there's a whole different story with it. Spider-Man games are supposed to be a trilogy, so that it might come later on.
No, well, I don't think they're allowed to use it anymore together with Spider-Man. See, it's my understanding that Sony own the rights to Spider-Man and the Spider-Man world, okay, so including Venom. But now that there's this agreement that Spider-Man is part of the MCU, so the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that Spider-Man is now sort of this middle ground. So you've got Marvel and you've got Sony, and then you've got Spider-Man just sort of in the middle there. That's my understanding of it. If I'm incorrect,
I didn't even think of it like that. Yeah.
If I'm incorrect, please somebody correct me. But just from talking to people like my friend Michael Domatorf, who is DC Down Under, I think that's how he explained it to me. He'll probably kill me if I've got it completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Because it's Sony bought the rights to Spider-Man back in, I don't know, the 90s or something, maybe even earlier.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And that. They've made this recent deal, which is why Spider-Man is in the Avengers movies, but they can't use him with any of the other stuff anymore, which is why Spider-Man couldn't be in the Venom movie. So they had to write Venom like it never touched Spider-Man before Eddie Brock. I think that's correct, okay. But someone may know better than me. I'm definitely no know-it-all with all that sort of stuff, but that's how I understand it anyway.
All right, that works for me. I'll accept it. Well, favourite suit. I think there was 25 of them, and I used 2, maybe 3 predominantly.
Yeah, same with me. Look, my favourite suit was actually the main one from the game, the one that was created by Insomniac, the white spider with the red and the blue, the one that Spider-Man upgrades and is the cover one. I loved that one. I thought it looked amazing, and I loved how the shoes kind of looked like his feet looked like sneakers built into the suit.
Yes,
I loved that.
And they had that gap in the middle for grinding.
Yeah, that's kind of what it had kind of like a heel on it, like almost like a ninja or a samurai sort of foot or something. I don't know, but it was really cool. I also used the Iron Spider.
Yes.
And also the one from Homecoming, whatever that was called.
Oh yeah, yep. The Stark suit, or the one suit he made himself. The Stark suit.
Yeah, the Stark suit. Yeah.
Yeah, my go-to was the Iron Spider. I love that suit. I loved it in the movies, and I just thought it looked brilliantly. Especially when I started to notice more and more, if you take a bit of a beating, it would actually show up on the suit, and the suit would start to look a bit dull and look like it's been belted around a few times, which was cool. And so I predominantly used the Iron Spider suit and the suit that you get from Black Cat. So when you find all the Black Cat little side mission thing you've got to go on. Black Cat leaves you all these clues of places that she's robbed.
Yeah, all those little things sticking out of the doorways.
Yeah. So you go around and you find all them, and you get this suit that's black. I think it's got a green spider on it.
Oh, yes, I know the one. Yep.
Or a white spider. And if you, when you have a close-up look at it, his fingers actually have claws on it.
Oh, I never noticed that.
Yeah, like Catwoman's claws sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, so it gives you that, that cat sort of feel, because Black Cat made it for him, and it was this whole little flirty thing for good old Peter, I suppose. And yeah, so I just thought it looked cool. I'm a big fan of the symbiote suit. It was probably the closest to it. So that was where it kept dragging me back into using it. But speaking of the MCU, did you do all the locations, the photograph locations?
Yes, I did.
Yes. So there was a lot of fan service within the locations. So not only was there the big main one, I suppose you'd see, with Avengers Tower.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see a lot of the other ones? Did you pick up the references that they were from?
Well, look, I've got to be honest with you. I did all of them, but most of them I sort of just did in like autopilot mode. I could just followed the map. Halfway through falling, I just automatically just pull out the camera, take a snapshot towards where the map said that the thing was, and then it would work. Like, I don't even know what I took a photo of.
Well, for those listening along, there's a few. There's a lot of fan service there. So you have the gym that Daredevil's father used to box at.
Oh, okay.
You have the PI service where what's her name?
Oh, Jessica
the other one,
Jones.
Jessica Jones. In Harlem, you've got where the big fella. I've gone completely blank. And it's stuff I didn't write down. What's the other one from the Netflix things?
Oh, you mean bad guy?
Luke Cage. No, Luke Cage.
Luke Cage, right.
Yeah, so you've got where he is, and the company that runs, well, that Iron Fist, his family sort of runs.
Oh, I never watched that.
That's in there. Yeah, like I said, you've got Avengers Tower. You've also got the Wakanda Embassy, which I thought was a pretty cool little thing. And I think that's about it. Off the top of my head, it is anyway.
There was also what is it, Murdoch and something?
Oh yes, of course. Yeah,
the law firm for
the law firm,
Matt Murdock Daredevil. And Fozzie, or whatever his name was.
Fozzie, yeah. I think that was all of them. There's a whole different range of it. It's one thing I suggest everyone do, just to go around and have a look at the different locations and see where they are and what they are. It's very cool. I think that's about it for gameplay, mate. Is there anything else you want to?
Well, I mean, I could talk about the bits of the gameplay that absolutely pissed me off and I thought was rubbish.
Yes, please do.
Now that we're warmed up, we're a bit warm and fuzzy saying how good the bloody thing is. I'll talk about the crap that I hated. Mate, how pathetic were those mini games?
Which ones?
Are you with me on that? The stupid, I think all of them. You know, the one where, there's the one where you got to line up the DNA lines.
Oh, yeah.
That was stupid. Then there was the other one where it was basically like Pipe Dream, where you had to... Do you remember that game, Pipe Dream?
Disney's Where's My Water?
Yeah, and you've got to put all the pipes in a row to get the energy to flow, and then you have to use resistors to drop the voltage, or you have to use something else to make the voltage higher. And you know what I found out in the settings? You can make it so you can just skip them.
Oh, okay.
Yep, there's a setting in the settings that says allow mini games to be skippable or something like that. So whenever a mini game came on, I just pressed R1 and then it come up, do you want to skip? And I'd press X and say yes, and it would go completed. They were all 100% optional. Even the stupid radio wave thing for those towers, the aerials, to unlock to show where everything is. I skipped every single one of them.
I went and did them all.
Yeah, I skipped them.
Oh, I did. Well, one of the trophies was to complete everything in Octavius's lab. So I literally sat there for an hour and did every single one back to back.
Yeah, you could have just skipped it. Just pressing that button just automatically completes the puzzle for you.
They weren't overly difficult.
No, well, that's why they were so. That's why I hated them, because they were literally just a chore. They weren't hard. They were just
there was no challenge to it.
No, it was just like, do this. I'm like, no, skip.
Yeah.
So they were rubbish. I thought they were. But anyway.
Yeah, that's probably my only real negative. That was because they were pointless.
Yeah. It was a little bit dicky sometimes. Like Spider-Man, I would imagine would probably always be like this, but it was hard to be precise on where you wanted to land. So if you wanted to land on like a small area, it was actually quite hard to do, because Spider-Man was really easy to move great distances at great speed. But when you wanted to be real fine-tuned and specific, it became really hard, which is why some of those challenges were really stupidly hard too.
Yeah.
Like the one where you had to... what were they? The drones? You had to catch the drones or something?
Yeah, and the drone would drop off surveillance cameras you had to hit.
Yeah, that thing. I give up on that crap. But, yeah. But yeah, I guess the other thing that really pissed me off was the way that they set up those coins. And unbeknownst to me, that I spent them all on the wrong shit, and it made it really hard for me to get all the trophies. So I gave up. I gave up on it.
That was a frustration that you couldn't get everything with one playthrough. You know, you had to, without knowing first up. I luckily just caught it and literally scraped through by the skin of my teeth. I'd got everything, every challenge I'd gotten to 2 stars, and it only just got me enough. I literally, the last thing I got was one of the Spider-Man suits.
Yeah, well, I used them all up on upgrading my gadgets, which aren't part of any of the trophies, so it was a waste of coins, and you can't take them back. So that was annoying, but that's probably all there was.
I agree with you with the movement as well. He was very hard to get precise. I found it also when, especially later in the game, I was doing the grand entrance into an area, whether it be a hostage negotiation or something that was on the ground, where I'd swing over the top of it and then do the plunge to the ground. Just sort of, so what you do is you shoot web to the ground and pull yourself down, so you can sort of send out a shockwave and knock everyone off. Yeah, I could never get that right to actually get it in the middle or pretty much anywhere near them.
Right.
I'd
Okay.
always end up on the outskirts. It was a little bit frustrating.
I don't think I actually ever attempted that move.
It was just one of those ones you had to try.
I don't think I did.
It was just one of those ones when I unlocked it. I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. That'll get me through some of these missions relatively quickly, and tried it a few times and just kept missing it, which was annoying. Well, mate, the next thing I want to talk about is side missions.
Well, I did them.
Yes, I know.
Because I've pretty much 100% of the game. I just haven't done the little bits and pieces to get the thing that I haven't done is 3-starred everything, which you shouldn't have to do. The side mission is really good. They brought in some really cool, small characters that otherwise I probably wouldn't know about. I don't remember the name of her. I think she was I don't know. She's some social media crazy bitch.
Oh, that was Screwball.
Yeah, Screwball.
The world's first live streaming supervillain.
Yeah, that's the one. She was kind of cool because she
Yes.
was real nuts.
Yes.
I liked that. That was really cool.
So what she was doing, she was she'd capture people and then stream you trying to save them.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So that was a very twisted way of doing things, but still a cool little thing as well.
Yeah, all for the views.
All for the views. That's what the weird things that we do for views.
Yeah.
I got a little bit frustrated with the research stations.
Oh yeah, I did
for Harry Osborn.
Yeah.
So there was one that actually took me a couple of goes to do, which was I think it was something to do with a storm and having to go and create this net around with lining up those damn satellites.
Oh yeah, and you couldn't drop below a certain level.
Yeah, so no, there was that one, and you couldn't go above a certain level as well. So it had to stay in this area and use like helicopters to go. Then there was another one which I think was like the very last one to do with those satellites, and there was this massive electrical storm coming in, and your suit would actually cause the lightning to be attracted to you. So you'd be swinging along, and then all of a sudden you'd get belted. And I think if you get belted 2 or 3 times, you drop, you're done. So that was probably
that one.
That was probably the most annoying one of it. And it was something as simple as if you're in the area that the lightning's got to hit, you've got to get out of that area, or you've got to dodge at the right time. So by the time you get, everything down to where you've got to go and how you've got to get there, you can sort of work out the easiest way to do it. But it was still a frustration, and it was unnecessary.
Yeah.
To be that annoying, it wasn't necessary, especially when everything else was such a breeze. This last one just become a frustration.
Well,
it was probably just me anyway. But
the things that I dreaded having to do was those Sable missions, where you had to take down the Sable soldiers. I hated that.
The flying ones especially.
Oh, those flying Sable sons of bitches. Oh my god. That was the most rage-inducing part of that game for me. I hated the Sable bits. Hated them. When I did the last one, I was like, yeah, good. That needs to end because they suck. They were so frustrating. There were so many of them, and they were so hard to take down. Pain in the arse.
Yeah, you get 4 or 5 of those flying guys, in the area with you, and it becomes so frustrating. It got to a point where I would just swing around the area.
Yeah.
And then jump up and just spam the web shot at him. That it would be enough to sort of take him up, and then I was able to get in close and beat the snot out of him, or get him close to a wall and kick him into the wall or something, just so the web would hold them.
Bastards.
But it was a bit of a pain in the ass.
What do you think about chasing the pigeons?
Yeah, different. It definitely got me using the swing a lot better, and a few of his little tricks and whatnot that you can do while you're swinging around. And the fact that you'd have to catch him, like you're swinging along after this bird that's flying away. That a pigeon can't move that quick. It's got to be like the world's fastest racing pigeons this guy's breeding.
Oh, it's in New York, mate. It's the best of the best.
Best of the best only. They're just crossbred with an eagle. And to capture them, you throw a web at them. Yeah, so you're snapping their neck as soon as you bring them in. But other than that, I actually said on the podcast last week, I like the little story that went with every one of the side missions.
Well, yeah, it was kind of a little bit, because it was the main, I don't know the guy who you're helping out, I can't remember his name, but he tells you this story about how his wife died of cancer and how I think they were hers or something, or she loved them so much. So you're helping him to feel a little bit better about himself because he's getting these pigeons back that managed to get away. So it was a cool little side story. He may be a character that is probably well known by massive Spider-Man fans. I don't know who he is, but I thought it was a neat little touch, that story. The story more so than actually catching the pigeons, but
yeah, that's the bit that I enjoyed about it was that story. That sort of tied it in. And you know, the first couple of pigeons that I did, they were just getting frustrating and whatnot. But once you sort of get that story flowing, that's when I think it become a lot better. You've also got what were some of the other side missions now? Gone blank.
There was those weird little spider bot missions where you had to run around being a spider bot. There was I don't know, nothing really like groundbreaking. Nothing
overly groundbreaking, nothing overly memorable. They were all cool. They had their own little things. I liked the Black Cat, the little story that went along with that, and that sort of leads into the DLC that's being released very shortly. And that's also got the big story behind it as well, which I thought was pretty cool. But the big thing that I want to talk about tonight is the main story itself, and all the little characters and how it all intertwines, and how Spider-Man as a person has grown, has changed. I said before the game came out that Spider-Man was one of those characters that kind of pissed me off because he was this, you know, just young, I suppose is probably the easiest way to describe it. He was just he was too much of a kid for me to have that sort of relationship or bond that you get with a character while you're playing.
You sounded a little bit like you should be saying something along the lines of "Get off my lawn."
I'm not quite there, but I'm more, you know, the Robert Downey Jr., the Iron Man sort of stage, where that's the sort of character that I gravitate towards, or the Wolverine, or you know, something like that. That's a little bit more feral and jaded, I suppose, than, you know, this kid jumping around. But
yeah, look, I've always liked him, but never overly. But I've always been a Spider-Man fan.
Well, I think probably the biggest spoiler we need to talk about, is or that we need to sort of advise people of, the man is in the game, the great Stan Lee. Yes,
Stan Lee's. Well, I think most people are going to assume that he probably would be, but his cameo that's probably one of the best cameos I've seen in a Marvel thing.
Yes, just I to be honest with you, I wasn't expecting it.
No, look, I wasn't expecting it there, but I wasn't surprised.
Yeah. No. I was pleasantly happy that he was there.
Yeah,
but I wasn't actually expecting to see him in it at all.
Oh, really?
Especially with well, the man's getting on a bit. You got to believe that.
It was a video game. He didn't have to do anything. He just spoke into a microphone.
I know, but still. Stan Lee's had a bit of a rough trot the last few months as well. So that was another thing that I'm like, oh, is he going to be there? But he was, so that was fantastic.
Oh, look, essentially he could just spend a day recording lines and they'll be able to put him in every movie and video game for the next 50 years.
Yeah.
With the technology we got today. But
hopefully they do.
It was pretty... What was that?
Hopefully they do.
Yeah, that'll be good. But his character model, they spared no expense. The detail that they had in Stan Lee was just as good as like the main characters, which was really cool. But yeah, so there's that scene where Mary Jane and Peter Parker are in a restaurant having a chitty chat. Spider-Man starts his spidey senses tingling and he nicks off, and then as Mary Jane goes to leave, it's a kind of little bit strange, but as she's leaving, Stan Lee it sort of pans across to him. He's sitting in the restaurant, and he says, "I love seeing you two together again. You are always my favourites."
Yeah, he's the short order cook.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he's the cook in the restaurant.
Oh, I thought he was just sitting in the restaurant, which is a little bit strange. But then the weird thing is it kind of looks like Mary Jane just ignores him and just walks out.
Yeah, she's like, okay.
Yeah, all right, weird old man. That's why because I thought he was just sitting in one of the bar stools.
No, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure he was the cook. He had the white cook shirt on.
I didn't even know we saw that much of him. But anyway, it was cool. I liked to see that. I like that he said that they're his favourite because I actually believe that probably is true. That he probably does love Spider-Man. It's probably his favourite character.
Yeah, well, I think he's actually said that he is. Yeah, so I'm glad that he got to have that little bit. And speaking about, well, let's get into it, mate. Spider-Man himself, the great Peter Parker.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Parker's been Spider-Man, I think it comes up in the game for about 10 years.
Hey, what? What did I miss?
Peter Parker.
Yeah.
At this point in the story, has been Spider-Man for about 10 years.
Oh, is that what you meant? Yes, I think it's actually 8, but yes.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, cool. So we're not getting the whole origin story or anything like that we've seen just way too many times.
Yes, thank God. We didn't need it.
Thankfully. Yeah, so we're coming into a Spider-Man that's a bit more aware of himself. He knows what he's doing. He's, grown up a bit and living his life and trying to live the life of Spider-Man as well. Him and Mary Jane are no longer a couple.
Mm-hmm.
And he's working for Dr. Octavius.
Yeah, that's right. He does a little moonlighting with Doc Ock.
Yes. So Octavius is doing his scientific discovery and moving forward and trying to go along. And Peter's pretty much interning, off-siting, borderline being used because he seems to be a bit of a genius compared to Ock. And yeah, the whole dynamic that Spider-Man has with May, with MJ, with Octavius, and then with Norman Osborn as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's more mature. It's more adult. The fact that Norman is now the mayor.
Yes.
Is a bit of a step and a bit of a change from some of the other stories that we've had, and I just think the whole story in itself has taken a very different turn to what I think a lot of people would be expecting.
Yeah, look, I can agree with that. It is a Spider-Man grown-up story, even though he is still just a young fella. Mm-hmm. But the story really does appeal to people like you and I. Like it's not a childish game. It's not something it's not an adult's game, but it's not a kid's game either. It's a good middle ground, I think. The story's good. I didn't think that the story was going to captivate me as much as it did. When I first started playing it, I loved it for the gameplay, and then I soon started loving it more so for the story. Such a good, well-told story. A lot of real gripping moments.
Yes.
Can we talk about with
we can talk about any of them, mate.
What's his name? Osborn, the son.
Harry,
yeah. Harry Osborn. And I kind of had my suspicions because all throughout the game, like you get recordings and all that sort of stuff from Harry and letters saying that he's going away, he's going to Europe or whatever for studies, and that's why you do those little side missions for him because he's away and needs to maintain it. And I sort of got this feeling that isn't what happened. And yeah, you find out that he's actually sick and dying. And he's never left. He's been at his house, at his home, and his father, Norman Osborn, is working on a cure for him, and he's got him sort of like in some sort of weird cocoon thing going on, which Mary Jane, I think, stumbles across.
No, I don't know if she actually sees it. She's in the room that the chamber is in, but she doesn't actually open the chamber. Yeah, because that was one thing when you played as this section of Mary Jane and you find this secret room.
Yeah, you're right. You're actually right. Yeah.
I had my suspicions as well. I was like, something's not right here. Something doesn't, Harry, MJ, Peter, doesn't matter what Spider-Man story you read, you watch, you see, or you hear, anything like that, they're always the staple. And they're the staple that they're always mates. Even when, Harry and Spider-Man have their little falling out thing, it's still a mateship and they're still within the same sort of story. So the fact that he's gone, he's disappeared, there's a few times where Mary Jane brings it up that she's worried, she hasn't heard from him, he's not returning text messages, all that sort of jazz. It comes up that there's something not quite there, and I thought that she'd find him. I thought whether she'd find out that he was in his bed, in his room, with the machines all shit stuck to him. But then we do find out later that he's in the cocoon.
Yeah. And there's like all these little hints around. Like you see things laying around like the Green Goblin, like the hoverboard thing.
Yep.
You see that in, I don't know where it is. It's like a town hall or something like that where it's on display as a technology. You also see the little Green Goblin grenades.
Yes.
As well, laying around, little Easter egg sort of things in the game. And it's all sort of foreshadowing what I would imagine either Green Goblin or Hobgoblin popping up in the Spider-Man 2, which is exciting because I like those characters. I reckon they're really cool. I just like to see how they tell it. And
how it changes, how it twists.
Yeah, and how
really it is like the Green Goblin and the Goblin are a twist on Harry and Norman Osborn.
Yes.
They twist their mentality. So I'd like to know how that happens. I'm looking forward to seeing that. But the bit with Harry, when Norman goes back to the secret room and you find out that Harry is in that sort of, the chamber, whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, that's in the post-game credits, I believe.
Yes. And Norman touches the glass. What do you think reaches out to him?
Well, it looks like a symbiote, doesn't it?
It does.
I don't know. But is it Oscorp where Spider-Man gets his bite? It is, isn't it?
Yes.
So I don't know. Is it some form of spider venom? Like, is he another spider?
I don't know.
It's because it looks like either web or like a black symbiote sort of thing, because it's not his hand that comes up onto the glass.
It kind of feels like a symbiote reaching out.
Yeah, but that doesn't sort of fit into any story arc that I know of, but not that they need to stick to that. I guess they could probably do whatever they want within guidelines, but I don't know. But that's essentially what it looked like. I'm like, what is that? Is that Venom? What? But it's Harry. Harry's not Venom.
Yeah. I don't recall a story or a version of Spider-Man, whether it be in one of the other realms. I don't recall Harry being attacked by a symbiote or attached with a symbiote, I should say.
No, but look, unless it's the sort of the something to do with the spiders, because they have like a whole bunch of spiders, and I think it was like spider number 76 that essentially bit Miles Morales, which is more of a spoiler for discussion.
Yes, well, that was the other one I was going to go into, the spiders that you spoke of. When Mary Jane is done doing what Mary Jane does best and being a nosy little shit, she takes a spider home unknowingly.
Yeah. Wasn't that bait to get everyone thinking, oh, is she going to be Spider-Girl?
Yeah, I think it might have been. But knowing that, I think Miles had been introduced by this stage.
Yeah, he had. Yeah, we saw Miles quite early on when we met his dad, Jefferson or something. Jefferson Davis, the police officer. That's something I wanted to talk about as well, which we could talk about while we're talking about Miles. But yeah, we got introduced to him a little bit earlier as Jefferson's son.
Mm-hmm.
And so he comes into play and gets bit. You go.
He gets bit. He becomes the. I don't know a whole lot about that side of the Spider-Man universe, like where he fits in or how it all works out. But Spider-Man kind of takes him under his wing straight very early on.
Yeah, because there's I think the comic that where Miles is introduced is called is it Ultimate? I think it's Ultimate Spider-Man, where essentially Miles Morales is Spider-Man. He sort of takes over. I remember years ago, I remember there being a big sort of thing about Spider-Man's black now. What's with that? And
that doesn't matter.
Well, no, I don't know Miles Morales' character before I know of him. I knew he existed. And when he popped up in this Spider-Man game, I was like, I know you're going to be Spider-Man because I know who Miles Morales is. And I like Miles. I like his character. I'm so glad I did, because if he was a dickhead, I'd be so disappointed. But Miles' character is actually really humble, really intelligent, and I think is a brilliant replacement for Peter Parker. So I can imagine that Peter Parker's only going to be a small role in Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, I think so as well. And especially being that very early on, you see Miles trying to help out with, was it Feast?
Yes. Yeah, where Aunt May...
Where May works.
And Martin Lee works as well.
So where they work. So he's trying to help out, to try and sort of get over or move forward from his father's death. And you see a part where I think he goes to get food or supplies or something like that, and he gets jumped on the way back. And Spider-Man, you swing in, you save the day, and then you actually spend a couple of minutes with him and just sort of teach him a little bit about fighting and what he should do and how he should, be able to look after himself. Just teach him a bit of self-defense, which I thought was really cool. And it kind of started that bond with Spider-Man, and because Peter knows who he is, it kind of kicked things off to know that it could grow into something later on.
Well, I don't think he was Spider Morales by then, though.
No, he wasn't.
No.
Yeah, that happens very late in the game.
Yes.
And I do like the finish from after the end. How he goes about explaining what's going on. Do you remember that bit?
Sorry, say that again.
At the end of the game, so the game's finished, you go back and you have the sort of post-finish, 6 months later sort of thing.
Yep.
And Miles turns up to Peter's apartment and he tries to start talking to him, and Peter thinks he needs the birds and the bees talk. When you're growing up, you're going to start getting hair there. And he's like, no. And then he sort of just stops him and jumps up and hangs off the roof.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, it's pretty. And then Peter does the same thing. He's like, pretty sick, isn't it? Or something along those lines. Yeah. I think it's a brilliant way to bring the characters out to, they had that little moment earlier on where you could tell, like Peter knew who he was, but Miles didn't know who Spider-Man was. And then it just sort of brought it, something vibrating then. And then it just sort of all brought it together.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that I wanted to say as well, with the killing Jefferson Davis, Miles's father, he was actually a really cool character to start off with. as a police officer who was assisting Spider-Man because he knew it was the right thing to do. But they killed him off pretty quickly with that fight with Mr. Negative, and I don't know, it just almost felt like that they just thought Miles can't be a superhero worth his stripes without having a tragically killed or murdered family member or something. Because I don't necessarily think that his father dies in all of his stories.
Yeah, I personally don't know them, but it was kind of an Uncle Ben moment, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You take over as playing as Miles, and you're, that this bomb's gone off at a rally where your father was being honoured for his good work, and you're making your way through to go and find your father. Very similar to the Uncle Ben story of finding him lying on the side of the road after you just let the guy go.
Yeah, it's just like, Batman lost his parents, Superman's parents died in a big explosion of the planet, and then obviously, depending on the story arcs, his human parents were killed, and then you've got who else? There's all these superheroes with dead parents and stuff like that. Was it necessarily such a bad thing to have a fairly well balanced, happy superhero that isn't miserable and upset by their past?
Well, I don't think Miles sort of plays that part.
No, he doesn't, but he still has that there.
He's got it there. Yeah. I think he plays it pretty well. He seems to be someone like a kid that wants to help a lot of people, and the abilities that he picks up, I think, only help in that. But you play as Miles, like I said earlier, and you also play a bit. And I have to be honest, one of my frustrating things was the Mary Jane sections of the game. You go from being this badass swinging through the city, being able to take down anything, to sneaking quietly around and doing investigative journalism work.
Yeah.
Once or twice I think it would have been all right, but I think there was just, for me personally, it was something that it was good, but it was bad at the same time, if that makes sense.
See, the gameplay wasn't fun. Like, it wasn't swinging around and fighting and all that sort of stuff, but I really liked the story that it introduced and the different point of view that you got to see. That's what I liked about Spider-Man, is it wasn't just an action game where, like, as much as I really enjoyed the Arkham games, I don't know if their stories stayed with me long after I finished the game. They were great games, but the story themselves were a bit sort of just superhero-y. Whereas I found that the background stuff that you got from playing as Miles and playing as Mary Jane was good to see, like a second point of view, which was really cool. Mm-hmm. I didn't mind it. I didn't think it overstepped the mark, and I thought it was a good pace change.
No, fair enough. That's good. Well, what about some of the bad guys, the villains?
Well, I think Dr. Octopus he was hidden. He was the main one that nobody really knew about until the game launched, because
I loved the evolution of Doc Ock.
Yeah, he progressed so bloody well, where it got to the point where I thought, Dr. Octopus, or Dr. Octavius, I should say, he seems like a really good guy with his heart in the right place, but then he starts to get impatient and starts to rush things. And he does. And he evolves.
Yeah, and he's rushing it because you find out, and this is another thing where it just adds an extra layer to the story. You find out he's got a degenerative disease.
Yes, that's right.
Which is something to do with his muscle system. They're pretty much breaking down.
Yeah, he's going to lose control of his arms and things like that.
Yeah. So he's got a mind that is absolutely humming, that is brilliant, but his body's failing him. Yeah, and that's where he comes up with the arms.
And not to mention, he's also being rushed by the fact that Norman Osborn's putting the pressure on and taking away funding because he's the mayor.
Exactly. And there's this whole story between it's called Oscorp because there was Osborn and Octavius that were together.
Yeah.
And that's how it all started. And then they've had their falling out, and then Osborn comes back later on and causes this problem, which then fires him up, which then takes him to take a risk. And just you constantly, you've got this thing in the background. Anyone who knows Spider-Man knows what's coming and what's happening with Octavius, but it's just a completely different spin on it. And you see this humble genius side of him that slowly and progressively turns into something else.
Well, he's essentially a mentor and very good friend, almost like the father that Peter Parker never had, and then turns into just a flat-out monster where he's the Octavius is gone. He's just doesn't exist anymore. It's Dr. Octopus, and he's a mental, crazy psychopath.
But he still gives, and we find out that he knows who Spider-Man is.
Yeah.
And he still gives him the choice. Obviously, Spider-Man's going to go and he's going to stop him and do that. But he tells him straight up, stay out of my way. This is what's going to happen. You stay away and I'll leave you alone, sort of thing. And it just shows that there is some of that human is still there. It's not just completely and 100% controlled by the arms. He's, going forward, and he's still got a little bit of himself, but ultimately that goes as well. Yeah. And some of the other big ones, Scorpion makes an appearance, as well as Rhino, the Vulture, Taskmaster, which were those challenges, which was a bit of a pain, but Taskmaster's pretty much just a hired goon, I suppose. He's looking for another corporation that wants to hire Spider-Man. Tombstone, which I thought was pretty cool, especially the little fight with him where you're throwing Harleys at him.
Yeah, Tombstone was cool.
Yeah, Tombstone's kind of this big, invulnerable thing that just takes an absolute belting.
Yeah, we get shot in the head in a cutscene and doesn't die.
Yeah, exactly. And the other big villain for the game was Mr. Negative.
Yes, Martin Lee, Mr. Negative.
Martin Lee. Yeah, so Martin Lee, we find out that he was experimented on, and that's where this animosity towards
Oscorp.
Norman Osborn and Oscorp in general comes.
Yeah, because they did some sort of experiments on him, which turned him into essentially old school film.
Yeah. A lot of powers. His band calls themselves the Demons, and they become one of the annoying things to take back around the city. You've also got Fisk in there as well, who's very early on, but
yeah, he's early on. I was surprised that he never came back in the end. Because I think he was away in, what was it called? That floating thing?
The raft.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he would have been in there. And when everybody broke out at the end, he never came back.
Yeah. Well, he might be coming back in a later DLC or something. He might have got out and gone to ground.
But what about the lines that he would say, like, you'll be sorry, I'm the one that held order in this town.
Yeah, and it starts to ring true.
It was absolutely true, yeah.
Yeah, and Spider-Man even says, oh, geez, it would have been all right if, maybe I should have just left Fisk alone.
Yep.
Yep, I thought that was very cool. But overall, how did you like the evolution of the story? So it kind of it went through 3 chapters. It kind of built to a point, which I kind of felt like it was ending, which was the Mr. Negative sort of timeline.
Oh yes,
and then it ramped up again.
Yeah, it was almost like a sequel, and like in one, like it was a built-in sequel.
Yeah.
I thought it was amazing. I absolutely loved it. I obviously I can fault it. There are some things that I didn't like about it, but to be realistic, I it's very insignificant in the whole scope of things. I thought the game was absolutely brilliant. I think it was a masterpiece. It's the best superhero game that I have ever played. And,
yes, I will second that.
And that's about the crux of it, really. It's a brilliant game, and if you have a PlayStation 4, you should probably try this game.
I think so. I'd quite happily hang my hat on that as well. That pretty much brings it all to a close, really, mate. The one thing I wanted to get from you was after it's finished and it's done, the game's finished, you come up to one of the most heartbreaking finishes to a game.
Ah, yes.
And then you have a 6 months later, like we spoke about earlier. How did you finish? How did you feel once you were finished? And I'll explain what I mean after I hear from you.
Oh, so we're dancing around the spoiler?
No, I think we can get into the spoiler. So the big spoiler for the end of the game is Aunt May knows that you're Spider-Man.
Yes.
She's known it for a long time. She tells you that, she's waited up and always been worried about what you were doing, but knew that you were doing it for the right reasons. Of course, she is telling you all this from her deathbed. She has been infected by pretty much chemical warfare.
Was it dragon's breath or something?
Dragon's breath, or devil's breath, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so pretty much you are fighting Dr. Octopus to get the cure for everybody. The whole city's been taken down. The city's been put on lockdown, and you've got to get this cure back from Octavius. You get the cure, you get it right there just in time, but you find out that there's not enough to go around. There's only enough for one dose, but they need that dose to break down and create more.
No,
so that they can save the whole city.
It's more of a time issue because there's enough, but
there's enough right then for one dose.
Yes,
but if that one dose is used, they can't make any more.
That's right.
So they need to use that, and it's going to take a few hours.
And that's when Peter is posed with a choice, and I'm so fucking glad that they didn't make me make that choice.
So am I.
But the choice was you use the dose that you have in your hand and save Aunt May, but then there's not enough to reproduce and save the city. Or you hand over the vial to the scientists. They go and make the cure, but it won't come fast enough, and our Aunt May will die.
Yes.
And then the acting in this final scene where Aunt May is dying in bed, and Spider-Man, he's in his Spider-Man suit with his mask off. He's there. Emotion on his face, even though it's not even a real face, but it was there. And he's holding that vial, and he goes over to the drip, and he goes to plug it in, and you're like, oh, Spider-Man can't do that. Yeah,
and even he yells at it, and May does the touching, it's all right, you know what you need to do, sort of thing. I was shocked. Absolutely, you could have knocked me over with a feather.
I'm not too proud to say I cried like a bitch. That was emotional as hell, man.
It was.
What a torn thing to do. This is my family member, but I'm this protector of this city. How do I let 100,000? I don't know how many people let thousands of people die because I want to save one person. He did what Spider-Man should have done, and he handed over the vial, and Aunt May died.
Yep. And I am so glad, because if they'd left it at that, I would have been a mess. I would have been an absolute mess, because you would have been questioning everything that you did up to that point. Like, oh, was there something else we could have done? Is there some other way we could have done it? And the fact is that they come back with that 6 months later and tie everything together.
Well, just as quickly at the start of the show, I said there was something I wanted to talk about where I was really happy that the writers had the balls to do what they needed to do for an amazing story, and that was kill off a main character like Aunt May. As much as, that's sad, that's bloody brilliant writing. That's a good story. A real gripping, heartfelt story. I thought it was brilliant. I loved it.
So how did you feel once they tied it all together, though?
Look, I was content. I thought that, there's with great power there comes great responsibility. That's the way it had to be. I thought the story was told well. I thought it was all brought together really well at the end, and it made me feel like there's some big things to come.
I liked that they tied in this new chapter with Peter and Mary Jane. And then you've also got the Miles connection.
Miles is great.
And where that's going to go. I'm really, really interested to see how that sort of evolves and where it comes from, or where it goes to, I should say. And you've also got the whole Osborn connection where, Norman Osborn has stepped down as mayor. I think he's actually been indicted and he's going to prison. And you've also got the Harry Osborn story as well, just sitting there teetering, waiting to go. I can't wait for the rest of it.
The only thing is, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I was watching a video today and someone made a suggestion that Spider-Man 2 is probably going to be a PS5 launch title.
Would not surprise me.
So, got a little while to go.
Yeah. Well, maybe only 18 months.
It'll be longer than that.
Maybe. Yeah. Christmas 2020. Probably.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Oh. Well, mate, that's pretty much it from me.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to bring up or go over or bookend it?
No, not really. Oh, Max Dillon, Electro, Cole McGrath, eat your heart out.
Yeah, that was a bit. How you going?
And Silver Sable. I hope they bring Silver Sable back in the second one and give her a little bit more of an important role, rather than just this sort of crazy bitch in control of a company that's supposed to be working with Spider-Man, but is just a big pain.
Yeah, they're just a pain in the arse and all of them go a bit loopy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's it. That's
good stuff, mate.
That's pretty well everything spoiled, I think.
I think so. Well, in case anyone hasn't picked up on it yet, get out, get your hands on it, try it. I know we're spoiled pretty much everything in the story, but it still needs to be experienced. We can't put across just what it truly felt like playing it.
I'd like to think we're probably preaching to the converted, because I don't think anybody that hasn't played it would listen to this. Well, I hope not anyway, because you just destroyed it. But anyway, you were warned. It's your own bloody fault.
Oh, well. Well, mate, thank you very much, Lucas. I hope you had fun getting back behind the mic in an official capacity.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anyway. And thanks for ending up the show with getting me all emotional about Aunt May.
Oh, no. Well, that's all right, mate.
Yeah.
Just picture what's coming next.
Brilliant.
Well, thank you, everyone that's listened. I hope you've enjoyed. If you've got any comments, leave it wherever this ends up, because I don't think we've talked about that yet. It'll end up everywhere. It always does. And, that's it from me. Hope you've had fun. I'm not going to sort of put it out there of when we're going to do these or how we're going to do them, because it's pretty much going to be as we feel they need to be done.
Yep, when we want to.
Yeah, so and then we'll get together and we'll play the games and then talk about them and break them down, just like we have tonight. So thank you, mate. Thank you to everyone that's listening. I've been Snoogs.
And I've been Lucas.
Cheers.
See ya.
Love seeing you two together again. You always were my favorites.